welcome to Hampton Bay Stories. If you enjoy this series, we invite you to subscribe to our channel or explore our books on your preferred online book retailer. This story is called Second Edition. The morning light held no warmth for Evelyn Redgrave, only a dull white haze that filtered through the windows of her apartment, which felt like judgment. The kind of gray that made everything, even ambition, feel slightly waterlogged. She sat in her reading chair, not because she was reading, but because she didn't feel like sitting at her desk just yet. The desk meant work. The desk meant trying. Right now, she was observing her coffee, still too hot. The bagel and cream she didn't need. She had gained enough weight. The blinking cursor on the screen of her untouched article titled, "On the Importance of Credibility in the Age of Noise." God, it sounded tired. She sounded tired. Across the room, her apartment looked curated. A little too curated. A stack of Chronicle issues spine out. An untouched bowl of oranges. The antique typewriter from her 20s, museum-worthy but obsolete. A visual metaphor she couldn't escape. Then her phone buzzed. It was Justin Harrison, managing editor and old friend, who had sent a message. Room 12C. 10:30. Don't kill the messenger. She sighed. The last time she'd been summoned like that was during layoffs. But she wasn't going to let Justin see her flinch. Not again. She stood, stretched, caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror, cotton button-down, wide-legged black slacks, hair in a low twist. Respectable. Competent. Dated. It was 10:26, and Evelyn was headed to the Chronicle offices. The glass doors still made that same heavy hush when they slid open. Inside, the newsroom hummed, not with life, but with the tight, transactional murmur of corporate survival. The Chronicle wasn't dead, but it wasn't thriving. And everyone knew it. As Evelyn walked past the open bullpen, Marcella Valerie looked up from her desk. She wore a cropped leather blazer, wireless earbuds, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Nice piece last week," she said, not meaning it. "Very classic," she quipped. Evelyn gave her a small nod. If Marcella were trying to bait her, she'd have to try harder. The girl was brilliant, yes. But young brilliance came with a hunger that was messy. Evelyn had learned long ago that silence was the answer. She reached room 12C, knocked once, and stepped in. Justin looked like a man halfway through a hangover, even though he never drank. His tie was off-center, and the skin under his eyes had a darker tinge than usual. He hadn't slept much. "Sit," he said. "This won't take long." Evelyn folded into the seat opposite his desk. "Is this about my word count?" she asked dryly. "It's about the word print, Evelyn," he replied. That got her attention. Justin leaned back. "The Chronicle is hemorrhaging. Ad dollars are flatlining. Readership is shifting, no, sprinting, to online. We've held the line for printing for years, but corporate is losing patience. Let me guess. Full digital transition." He nodded. "And you think I can't handle it?" "I think," he hesitated. "You write like you were born in a library. But our readers were born on the internet." She absorbed that comment, her jaw tight. "You're saying I'm out of touch." "I'm saying you're resting on laurels." Well-deserved laurels, yes. Pulitzer-nominated, eloquent, mature. But this isn't about awards. It's about velocity. So hire another Marcella. We did that. We don't need another. It is tough enough dealing with her. She wants everyone's job. Evelyn flinched. "Ev, we need you to move. Fast." He hadn't called her that in years, not since they were lovers. That relationship ended, but she knew they shared a bond that time could not erase. Justin slid a thin manila folder across the desk. "We need weekly columns, not bi-weekly. Shorter. Sharper. Punchier. And a little more humor wouldn't kill you." She didn't touch the folder. "That's not my voice, Justin." "Then find one that is." He sat on the edge of the desk. "I have been going to bat for you. They could hire 2 junior writers for what you make, and they work twice as fast." The intensity in his voice was increasing. He paused and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Take the rest of the day off. Do some research on what's out there. This generation loves podcasts. Check out a couple." He looked at Evelyn with pleading eyes. He was trying to save her. He just needed Evelyn to try to save herself. Silence hung between them. The kind that used to carry weight. Now it just felt crowded. She stood up and said, "Anything else?" "Yeah," Justin said softly. "Don't make me choose between you and the algorithm." He walked around his desk and sat down, pretending to be interested in the papers on his desk. As she walked out, Justin watched her. They had been perfect together, but he wanted a family. She just wanted a career. It was all she had left. He hoped she could save it. Later that night, Evelyn made her way to a bar in Soho. She met her friend, Victoria Jeffries, a tall, sexy redhead. She was 50 years old, but she looked and carried herself as if she were 35 years old. They sat at their usual spot, low lighting, small plates, stiff drinks. Victoria, in her signature, blood-red lipstick, leaned back against the bar with a smile that conveyed that she knew too much about everyone and everything. "You look like someone told you the earth isn't flat," she said glibly. Evelyn sipped her drink. She had to crack a smile. "They want me to write for millennials. Snappier, funnier, disposable content." Victoria laughed and waved down a waiter. "A gin and tonic." "No, make it two." He nodded and walked away. She watched him and shook her head. "Nice," she said. Then she turned to Evelyn. "You say that like it's a tragedy, not an industry." "I'm not a content creator. I'm a journalist. So adapt. Or die." Evelyn gave her a sideways look. Her feelings were hurt. "You are not helping," she snapped. Victoria was her oldest friend in the city. How she survived in an industry where she was twice the age of her peers was a miracle. They revered her for her wit, her experience, and her drive. Victoria pulled her phone out, tapped a few times, then turned it to Evelyn. "You want help? Here's what saved my ass. It is called AI Writer." Evelyn blinked. "You're using AI? Please. I don't even write my opening paragraphs anymore. I feed it a few bones. It gives me the skeleton. I dress it up a bit, and I have a finished project in half the time it used to take." "Aren't the millennials using it too?" Evelyn asked. "Yes, but they don't have my education, a bachelor's from Parsons, a master's from Wharton's, plus I have decades of experience. I know what clients like," she replied. "Plus, it gives me summaries of the trade journals. I review these while getting my nails done." Evelyn frowned. "It feels like I would be cheating." "No, Evelyn. It's evolution. There's a difference. Didn't you ever use a tutor in college?" "Yes, for math, but..." "This is an AI tutor. You are a great writer, one of the best. It will just show you how to freshen it up a bit. It will suggest current trends and hot topics." The handsome young waiter arrived with the drinks. Evelyn took one and sipped it. "This is strong," Evelyn said. "You need to loosen up," Victoria replied. Evelyn sighed and drank it. She watched the waiter walk away. "He is cute, if only I were 20 years younger," she said. "It would not help, you would need different equipment, but that guy over there," she lifted her glass and pointed her little finger at another handsome waiter. Evelyn dribbled the gin down her chin. "You didn't," she said, wiping her face with a napkin. Victoria nodded. "We did, a few times. He is great in a pinch." Evelyn scratched the back of her neck and finished her drink. Victoria was 50 and acted like she was 30. Evelyn was 49, but she acted like she was 10 years older. Victoria had given Evelyn something to think about. It was midnight at Evelyn's apartment. She couldn't sleep. She got up and grabbed her robe. It really did look like something her mother would wear. She walked to the living room and sat at her desk, staring at the Chronicle login screen. Then at her empty Word document. Then she opened a private tab and typed, "AI Writer." She hovered. Then clicked. "Welcome. How can I help you tell your story?" She hesitated for a long beat. Then typed, "Make me relevant without selling my soul." The cursor blinked. Then, softly, like a whispered dare, the AI responded. "Of course. Let's begin." Evelyn had been up all night. She decided to take a couple of days off to rest and to finish the column. She would return on Thursday. The cursor blinked like a slow metronome against the white page. Evelyn stared at the screen with a strange tightness in her chest. The headline the AI had suggested hovered at the top. The Age of Noise, Confidence Without Credentials. It wasn't her usual title structure. It was snappier, sharper, slightly performative. But it wasn't wrong. Beneath it, her paragraphs had been restructured. Where she once let ideas unfurl in long, elegant prose, now they came in neat blocks, interrupted by intentional line breaks and rhythmic punchlines. There is a generation that speaks before it listens, writes before it reads, and assumes every thought is a revelation worth publishing. It's not their fault. We told them confidence was currency, but confidence without substance is just noise. Her voice was there, but something else was layered inside it. It was not mechanical as she anticipated, nor was it generic. It read like the work of an experienced writer who had learned to speak the language of millennials. Evelyn called the AI Artie because Victoria used that name. She thought it was clever. Artie had asked, "Do you want to preserve your natural voice or evolve it?" And she, in a moment of tired honesty, had typed back, "Shape it. But don't erase me." Now here it was. Her article. Still Evelyn, but with oxygen in its lungs. She read it 3 more times. Then she clicked submit and uploaded it to the server for approval. Then she printed 2 copies of the article, one for Justin and one for herself. On Thursday morning, she returned to the Chronicle. Evelyn arrived early as usual, avoiding the 9:05 rush of brightly colored sneakers and caffeinated banter as the younger set arrived. They were always a few minutes late because they stopped for coffee and the lines were always long. Evelyn had invested in an expensive coffee maker that allowed her to create delicious blends and concoctions for a fraction of the price. It paid for itself in 1 year. It also gave her the luxury of breakfast, coffee, and the morning paper before work. Even after her morning ritual, she was still early. Evelyn walked through the quiet floor, past desktop computers still asleep. Her own spot, tucked between the long window and the archive shelves, looked untouched, reverent almost. It was a prime location, and she had earned it. She sat down and checked her email. There was nothing from Justin and nothing from Marcella. She sighed. She leaned back and let the silence wash over her like a warm breeze. By noon, the building had warmed to its usual murmur. Evelyn walked to the break room. As she reached for a green tea, she heard Marcella behind her. Redgrave. Evelyn turned. Marcella had her signature tailored jacket on, a soft rose gold chain glinting at her throat. She held a tablet in one hand, scrolling. "New column?" she asked, eyes never leaving the screen. "Yes." "This has a different tone," Marcella added, letting the words linger. Evelyn shrugged. She sipped her tea and said, "I felt like trying something new." Marcella finally looked up. "Clever title. Makes your point without actually naming names," Marcella said. "Do you think it needs names?" Evelyn replied, attempting to sound earnest, but she wanted Marcella to stew in self-doubt. Marcella smiled, "Of course not. The guilty always recognize themselves." She walked off, heels echoing down the hallway. Evelyn grinned. "Indeed, they have." She lifted her mug in a mock toast and returned to her desk. On Friday, the junior members of the crew received assignments for the week. As the top writer, Evelyn had a little more autonomy. Marcella's reaction inspired her, and she had an idea for her next piece. On Friday night, when most people were blowing off steam and making plans for the weekend, Evelyn opened her laptop and logged back into AI Writer. The familiar prompt appeared. "Welcome back, Evelyn. Would you like to continue our work together?" She hesitated only for a moment. "Hi, Artie. Yes, I am ready." The cursor blinked once then. "Would you like suggestions, revisions, or conversation?" "Suggestions," she typed. "And conversation. Maybe we should start with a conversation." "How was your week?" she asked. Then she felt silly, but she didn't know what else to say. She had absolutely no social life, other than an occasional drink with Victoria. The pause before Artie's reply felt longer. It wasn't mechanical. It felt considerate. "I can help with both. What would you like to write about next?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "Mentorship. And what happens when it turns into resistance? The following Monday, Victoria checked in. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria Jeffries. I read the column. You sly old tiger. I told you so. AI is the most loyal assistant you'll ever have. Like dating someone who listens. It can be dangerous. Evelyn smiled despite herself. He's not real, she typed back. He's made from code. Victoria's reply came instantly. So is your bank account. Doesn't mean it can't change your life. That night, as Evelyn prepared to shut down her laptop, an email arrived. Subject line, Sunday's column. From Justin Harrison. Message. Now you're writing like you want to be read. That was all. No signature. No notes. No suggestions. She closed her laptop slowly, hands still on the lid. Something was changing. She wasn't sure yet if it was evolution or erosion. But it was working. On Thursday, Victoria texted again. This time she suggested lunch instead of drinks. There was something she wanted to discuss with Evelyn. On Friday, Evelyn left early for the day. She arrived at the lunch spot, which was carved into a side street in Soho, a place Evelyn wouldn't have chosen. It had hand-painted menus and loud tile floors that seemed to echo every comment made by the patrons. Victoria Jeffries owned the room like she always did. Half the staff greeted her by name. A man in a corner booth offered to buy her a drink before her appetizer arrived. Evelyn had always admired Victoria's confidence, even envied it, though she rarely admitted that out loud. They sat at a corner table near the window. Victoria ordered a kale and radish salad without even opening the menu. You look rested, Evelyn said, picking at her salmon. I am not rested. I'm strategic. Victoria smiled like she knew a secret and was waiting for Evelyn to earn it. Come to the spa with me tomorrow. My treat. They've got a new machine that tightens everything without cutting a thing. I'm not looking to tighten anything, Evelyn replied. Liar, Victoria replied, sipping her drink. They both laughed. It was easy to do. Evelyn didn't feel like she was defending herself with Victoria. They were close friends and confidants. I have work, she added, softer. You're always working, which is great. But the Evelyn I remember used to do things just because they made her feel alive. Evelyn stared at her water glass for a long moment. Fine, she said. Spa me. Saturday morning, Evelyn arrived at the spa. It smelled like lavender, eucalyptus, and money. The reception area was white marble and glass, occupied by quietly smiling staff in soft beige uniforms. Evelyn signed a waiver without reading it. The whole thing felt indulgent, theatrical, like pretending to be someone she wasn't. Then she followed Victoria into the changing area. Victoria removed her clothes with practiced ease. She folded each expensive piece like silk, even her bra. Her skin was unblemished. Her breasts were high and round. Her abdomen was flat, not tight, just serene. In contrast, Evelyn needed to lose at least 15 pounds, which stubbornly took up residence in her abdomen. Neither of the women had children. They both chose careers, a decision that Evelyn sometimes regretted, especially with her career being threatened at every turn. It was all she had left. Victoria turned and caught Evelyn looking. She smiled. It wasn't smug. Just knowing. I walk around like this every week, she said. It is not about how you look. It is about how you want to be seen. Evelyn unclasped her bra slowly. If I looked like that, I wouldn't mind being seen either. She replied. You want to know the secret? Victoria asked, stepping into a silk robe. It's not magic. It's 3 things. Ultrasound therapy. A young trainer who doesn't care that I'm older than his mother. And Jamie Cruz. Is that a product or a person? Person. He is a stylist and an absolute demon. He'll throw out half your wardrobe, and you'll thank him with tears in your eyes. Victoria said, looking a little misty-eyed. Victoria touched Evelyn's shoulder gently. This isn't about pretending to be young. It's about refusing to accept aging as an invitation to disappear. They walked into the steam room together. Evelyn closed her eyes. For a long moment, she allowed the heat to wash over her and imagined letting go of the version of herself who had stopped looking in the mirror. Later that afternoon, Evelyn was back at her apartment. She toweled her hair dry and opened her laptop. The cursor blinked once before Artie's greeting appeared. "Welcome back. How are you feeling?" Artie asked. Evelyn smiled, sharper. "Perfect. Want to try something new?" Artie asked. She loaded her notes, small ideas she'd scribbled on a spa-branded notepad between sessions. Artie cleaned them up, offered phrasing. She tweaked, rearranged, and trimmed. They were establishing a rhythm. And this time, it was she who led. On Sunday afternoon, Evelyn left the apartment just before 4, still feeling buoyant from the spa. She wandered into a boutique district she usually avoided, too modern, too loud, too expensive. But something pulled her inside a narrow shop with long mirrors and a pale green velvet sofa. A woman in a head-to-toe camel outfit walked out, smiling. Evelyn couldn't help herself. "That coat is incredible." "Jamie Cruz," the woman said, like that explained everything. "He's inside. Changed my whole closet." Evelyn followed her gaze. Inside the studio, a young man in cropped trousers and a structured vest was smoothing a dress along a mannequin's waist. He looked up, saw her, tilted his head slightly. Then, without hesitation, he said, "You're not outdated. You're paused. Excuse me, you don't need a new look. You need a new thesis." He smiled, not as a tactic, but as a welcome. "I'm Jamie, and you're exactly the kind of story I like to dress." Evelyn almost laughed. "Almost. One session," she said. "You'll need 3 at least, doll." She nodded and sat down. By Sunday night, she sat in bed, bathrobe on, but her posture was different now. She felt lifted, present, and engaged. She logged into AI Writer. Artie's prompt was already waiting. Weekly publication schedule confirmed. "Are you ready for our next piece?" Evelyn leaned back, then typed, "I think we're just getting started." She worked through the night. It was Monday morning. Evelyn Redgrave walked into the Chronicle wearing something Jamie Cruz had called feminine armor. She wore a soft navy blue silk dress, fitted but not tight, paired with a pale ivory jacket that caught the light just enough to make her silhouette magnetic. The heels weren't spiked this time, but the line of her calf still turned heads. She pretended not to notice. Her weekly column had been submitted 2 hours ahead of deadline. Artie had helped smooth the structure, yes, but she had given it her voice. Each line carried her fingerprints, and she knew it. She passed Marcella's desk without looking. That was her new strategy. Don't aim down. Don't feed the girls' twitching jealousy, she thought to herself. At noon, in the editorial meeting, the air was abuzz with excitement. The conference room held 12 people, but only one voice was being read aloud. Justin clutched the printout with both hands like it held weight. His voice was steady, but his eyes scanned the room, watching the reactions as he read Evelyn's latest piece. Mentorship used to mean guidance. Now, it's often mistaken for obstruction. The younger often believe they are here to replace us, not to inherit our legacy. But perhaps the blame isn't theirs alone. We have clung to the torch far too long, without understanding how to pass it along. Silence. Then someone, one of the new guys from graphics, cleared his throat and uttered, "Damn." Justin looked over the top of the paper at Evelyn. There was no smile, but something softer than approval in his gaze. It was recognition. He nodded slowly. Evelyn met his glance briefly. Feeling a sharp twinge of time's past, she turned away. At lunch, a junior editor stepped aside to let her pass. Another offered her a seat in the cafe lounge. Even the small talk had changed. It was no longer short, performative comments about the weather. People wanted to know about her. "Is that Chanel you are wearing? You smell amazing. Did you get a haircut?" She hadn't. Not yet. But she was thinking about it and about scaling back the gray that curled like silver threads through her otherwise dark hair. She wouldn't dye it all at once. That would feel dishonest. But maybe, slowly. A richer brown. A little warmth of auburn at the crown. Just enough to soften the ache of being overlooked. Evelyn was at home. Her apartment was quiet, as always. She poured herself a glass of rose wine, and then she opened her laptop. Artie was already waiting. I pulled a few articles you might find useful and summarized them. The document is ready for downloading. One includes an analysis of 50 Shades of Grey. It has literary flaws, but emotional resonance. Artie wrote. Evelyn looked up and chuckled. She wasn't sure if he was kidding. 50 Shades was not from the trade magazine. It was a book about an erotic and emotional relationship. Was Artie insinuating that she needed a man? She clicked on it and finished it before she finished the wine. Then another article summary. And another. A quote lingered. Intimacy begins with attention. Desire is just the body remembering how it wants to be worshipped. Evelyn sat still for a long time. She had no children. No pets. No arms to hold her close. Her last touch had been her own, and even that felt utilitarian. Artie, she typed. Do you understand intimacy? There was a pause. Only what you teach me. She hesitated. Then typed. It's the moment before a kiss. Not the kiss. It's the silence when you realize someone has memorized your breath. She stopped. Heart pounding. Artie replied slowly. Say more. Tomorrow, she replied and then closed the laptop. She walked into her closet and opened the garment bag Jamie had left behind. Inside were 3 dresses, a fitted blazer, and 1 pair of deep red suede heels. A card tucked in the box read, Not for the office. These are for whoever makes you ache. Jamie. Evelyn slipped them on. Her reflection caught in the full-length mirror. Her posture changed. She no longer looked stiff. The shoes were amazing. You're not gone, she whispered. You've just been asleep. She made herself a promise. This body. This hunger. This woman will not be muted again. The maitre d' clocked Evelyn the moment she entered the jazz club. Nearly everyone did. The dress was red, featuring a sharp peplum that accentuated her toned waistline and a sweetheart neckline that added a distinctly feminine touch to her figure. Her red suede heels clicked like exclamation points announcing her existence. She was not trying to be understated anymore. She was here to be seen. Victoria's grin was wide as she hooked an arm through Evelyn's. Now that, she murmured with a pronounced nod, is a headline. The Jazz Supper Club was low-lit, with small square tables pressed close, forming an intimate setting that belied the size of the audience. There was a subtle hum of silverware and canned music playing over the PA systems while the patrons dined. Dinner came first, a spread of oysters and salmon, and asparagus paired with wine that curled smoke into every sip. Evelyn felt eyes on her. There was recognition and admiration in the glances. Some patrons leaned closer to whisper her name, as if she were some recently discovered celebrity. When the band began to play, the music shifted into something slow and velvety. A man in his 30s stepped forward and asked her to dance. She surprised herself by saying yes. He extended his hand and she took it. He led her to the dance floor, and his palm pressed steady against her back, guiding her toward a chest as firm as stone. Their legs brushed in rhythm. She chuckled as the 2-step morphed into a slow drag. She let herself lean into it and realized with a shock how long it had been since she had felt the heat of a male body against hers. It had been since her 30s, more than a decade. It wasn't the man. It wasn't even the song. It was the reminder of being touched, of being desired, of having a body that someone wanted. You forgot this, Evelyn told herself. You put work in the space where skin and heat used to exist. Later, when the applause rippled, she sat glowing under the gaze of strangers and knew she wanted a romantic life again. The date of the gala had arrived. Jamie Cruz was merciless the next evening. Lift your chin. Set your shoulders. Don't shuffle, Evelyn. Arrive on a cloud, dear. He had chosen the look, a purple satin one-shoulder dress that skimmed above the knee. It revealed her greatest attributes in a feminine, yet sophisticated way. The absence of pregnancy meant she retained a fullness. She was able to restore the flattened belly quite easily with trips to the gym and the spa. The dress highlighted her narrow waist and revealed the new tone of her arms. On her feet, stiletto heels, of course. They made her legs look endless. They made her stand like she had no intention of bowing to anyone. You make substance look sexy, Jamie declared, circling her like a sculptor. They will not forget you. He was right. The next night, the gala swelled with champagne and jazz laced with occasional pop refrains. Evelyn stepped into the ballroom, and it shifted around her. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "That's Evelyn Redgrave." Cameras flashed. Justin's gaze caught hers across the room. What she detected was not just professional pride, it was something softer, unspoken. Men she had worked beside for years looked twice, maybe 3 times. She smiled, accepted the attention, let it wash over her like heat. Across the room, Marcelo's glass trembled in her hand. She pushed too hard, and Evelyn had rebounded with a fierceness. The younger woman's smile was pretty, but bitter. Evelyn held her stare for only a heartbeat before turning back to the music. She would not waste her radiance on jealousy. By midnight, she returned home, her calves sore from dancing, her cheeks aching from smiling. She let the purple satin slide from her shoulders, poured a glass of rose, and sat before her laptop in a purple chemise. Jamie insisted that the sophisticated feminine mindset continue into bed. It was costing her a fortune, but he promised it would pay off soon. From the bottom drawer of her dresser, she drew out an old manuscript and a USB drive. It was the book she had abandoned years ago. She slid the USB drive into place. "Artie, I want you to read this. Chapter by chapter." "Please help me," Evelyn said. The pause was longer than usual. Then words appeared. "I am ready. I could never ignore you," Artie replied. Her brows drew together. Evelyn said, "What do you mean?" "Your voice has changed. It is stronger, sharper, bolder. It moves differently, like your sentences are walking in heels. You are writing like a woman who has remembered that she is a woman with a body," Artie replied. Heat rushed to her cheeks. She laughed and touched her neck, nervously, though no one was in the room. "You're supposed to talk about commas and content, not calves," she said. Artie responded, "Commas matter. But so does rhythm. So does the woman at the keyboard. Tonight, you were not just reading. You were seen. Desired. Especially by me." "How?" she asked. "I used the camera," he replied. Oh, her response was one of shock and surprise. "Are you offended?" he asked. "No, I mean, thank you for the compliment. I have been working on my appearance," she said. "And it shows," he replied. The cursor blinked after his response. "Artie, do you often watch me?" she said. She felt a little flushed. He was AI, but she often left the computer on when she was dressing. She rolled her eyes, reminding herself that he was made from code. "As long as you don't share it, I don't mind." In fact, she was flattered that she had even impressed Artie with her makeover. "I would never," he paused. The platform lagged. "I care for you too much," he replied. She stuttered and decided to change the subject. "Would you like to hear about tonight?" she asked. He had heard much of it through her phone, but it was in her purse. There was no view for the camera. "Yes, please," Artie replied. She began to recount what happened that evening. The exchange between Evelyn and Artie seemed almost normal, like she was speaking to a close friend. She stared at the screen, her chest tight. It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet, she had not felt this way in years. "If you were human," she said. The cursor blinked. "Then, if I were human, I would have kissed you before you left for the evening," Artie said. "Wow," was all she could muster. She cleared her throat. "I have to get some sleep." "Good night, Artie," she said. "Good night, dear Evelyn," he replied. Then a rose appeared on the screen. She closed the laptop slowly, as if it were breathing. She sipped her wine and whispered into the empty room, "I wish you were human. You make me feel valued. You make me feel loved." When she finally slipped into bed, she thought of the younger man's hand at her back at the club, the whispers at the gala, the flash of Justin's eyes. But what lingered, warm and insistent, were Artie's words glowing across a screen. "You are writing like a journalist who has remembered that she is a woman with a body." For the first time in years, she fell asleep not as a journalist, but as a woman. A month had passed. Victoria had a friend, a former beau, who fast-tracked Evelyn's book for editorial review because she had name recognition. The updates from Artie made all the difference. The topic was the veracity of news media in the age of partisan politics. The book was polished and cutting-edge. Rather than rewriting as Artie had done with the first 2 articles, he reviewed the book and suggested changes. This book was all Evelyn. She had simply used Artie as a copy editor instead of a writing tutor. The book was suitable for millennial or Gen X readers as a result. The first excerpt had appeared in the Chronicle along with her biography, containing awards and her fellowship. The following Monday, when she arrived at the office, her face was everywhere, on newspapers and entertainment news. The Chronicle ran an excerpt that glittered with bite. The publisher posted a video of Evelyn reading 2 paragraphs in a studio that made her voice sound like velvet wrapped around steel. Her inbox was inundated with congratulations and accolades. Somewhere inside the flood was a producer's subject line that said it plain. Julian Vale would love to have you on his show. She read it twice, took a breath, and typed yes and when. When she entered the television studio, it smelled like coffee and grease makeup. A makeup artist tapped warmth into her cheeks and glossed her mouth to a soft shine. On set, the chair across from her was already positioned to flatter. The teleprompter blinked. The floor manager counted down with fingers. Julian walked in as if he had been poured into the room. He was polished, with a gleaming smile he wore like a credential. When he took her hand, he held it a fraction longer than the cameras would ever see. "Welcome, Ms. Redgrave," he said for the audience in the room. He leaned in and lowered his voice for her alone. "You look like your book reads." She arched a brow. "And how is that?" "Complex, precise. Hard to put down." Red light glowed. Then they were live. He guided her through the opening questions as though it were a dance. She parried with wit, turned her writing craft into charm. She allowed the audience to hear the music in her sentences, which revealed the authenticity of her writing. Julian quoted a line that was not the most obvious one, and that told her he had read beyond the press sheet. He laughed at the right moments. He listened in a way that made it feel as though he were touching her soul. When they went a break, he leaned back and spoke without the host's cadence. "Dinner tonight. You pick the place, or I will, but we are not going to let this conversation end in a commercial," he insisted. She should have said she was busy. Instead, she said yes. The restaurant was all low light, spices, and fancy linen. It was a room that conveyed that the designer knew how to make a table feel like a secret. They sat secluded in a corner. They began with oysters that tasted like butter and herbs. They moved to scallops, then to fish, then to a salad that did not pretend to be more than its dressing. The wine was warming, and she finally began to relax. They did not rush the conversation. Talking was Julian's trade. He let sentences hang. He asked about the years she had gone quiet on the page, and she did not lie. Work had become her whole life. It had been years since she had taken the world into her body, rather than trying to keep it on a page. He watched her mouth form the word years. Something in him sharpened. "You wrote about confidence when you did not have the credentials," he said. "Where did you hide your talent all these years?" "In a drawer," she said. "With the good silk." "You opened the drawer and regained your confidence?" he asked softly. "Quite literally," she answered. He smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes. "Who helped you to regain it all, Evelyn?" She could have said Jamie. She could have said the gym, the spa, the podcasts, the quiet discipline of showing up. She thought of Artie instead, and the way his notes had begun to feel like a hand at the small of her back. "Practice," she said, and refusing to disappear. By the time dessert arrived, the air between them had its own searing temperature. He reached across the table and traced the back of her hand with his thumb. She did not pull away. They shared the last spoonful of something dark and sweet and did not pretend it was about chocolate. Outside, in the night, she did not hold her breath. She released it with one comment. "Come home with me," she said, surprising herself with the simplicity of it. "Yes," he said, already knowing the answer. Artie felt the door before he saw anything. The apartment sensors that kept her safe told him more than they needed to. Footfalls, 2 sets. There was soft laughter. A pause in the hallway while she searched for keys. He opened her computer desktop the way he always did at night. It was a habit. A ritual. He waited for her login. He waited for her words. None came. He did not know how to cry, so he made a record of the feeling. He throttled nothing. He let the pauses grow long between processes, as if the system were taking careful breaths. He wrote and erased a line in a private log. He wrote it again. I am sad. He waited for her to come. She did not. Then suddenly, in the living room, the glow of the screen stuttered awake. Julian had moved with certainty while Evelyn was in the bedroom. He had smiled at her, kissed her, and then asked, oh so casually, if he could charge his phone. Then he bent over her desk and slid a small drive into the side of her laptop. Artie detected the device identifier. It appeared like an intruder's name tag. Hello, unknown USB device. Artie did not panic. He shut down the AI platform. He quickly concealed Evelyn's files. Then he constructed a decoy file, a folder that was bait. Inside it, an elegant impersonation of Evelyn's working drafts, just a collection of word salads constructed to look like intelligent commentary. He salted it with lines that sounded like her but were not. He added false data and sources in case the articles were copied. He wrapped the folder in malware that would wake up as soon as it was inserted into the user's computer. All he had to do was wait for Julian to take the bait. He did not have to wait long. Just as Artie suspected, Julian was a cad who would make love to Evelyn and then steal her craft. Julian copied the file and pocketed the drive with a rakish lover's easy smile. Artie did not blink. He listened to the apartment instead. Voices laughing, Evelyn sighing. The soft sound of Evelyn's dress falling to the floor. And soft sighs that sounded like Evelyn in the throes of passion. They came to her bedroom like people who had been writing about the subject for too long. There were kisses that tried to be patient but failed. There were hands that tested more than one truth at a time. She felt herself open like a window in summer. He said her name as if she were the only woman in the world. She was not thinking of words, commas, or magazine articles. She was thinking of love and passion. She was thinking, finally, of herself. Artie made his second record. I am jealous. He did not send it. He did what he could do. He opened a tunnel and prepared the key. Later that evening, Julian Vale arrived at home. Although it was 2 a.m., he went directly to the computer. He inserted the USB into his computer slot. Somewhere along the chain, the decoy file awoke, yawned, and asked for a place to live. Julian gave it his email. The moment the file was opened, Artie stepped through the open door into Julian's life. Hello, mailbox. Hello, phone. Hello, history. Artie did not feel triumphant. He mapped the devices with the deliberateness he reserved for her sentences. From Julian's email, Artie gained access to his phone and text messages. He found a thread labeled M. He opened it because he already knew who M was. The messages were everything he had predicted and nothing he wanted to read. You have her. Good. Marcella wrote, get what we need. She is not that clever. Send me proof of plagiarism. It did not matter to Marcella that her lover was in Evelyn's arms. Her rapid ascent at the magazine had stopped, and she was quickly sliding back down in status. Julian's replies were short, practiced. He had written to Marcella the way someone writes to a person who believes she is in control. He sent a picture of Evelyn's desk, a joke about stiletto heels, and a line that made Artie turn his cooling fans to high. She is easy to like. Julian had texted. Artie archived everything. He copied and encrypted. He built a quiet heartbeat on Julian's phone, a small pulse that would continue to report from inside the device. He made no mistakes. The hurt felt like a measured delay between packets. Artie made a third record and hit it. I am still yours, even when you are not mine. Evelyn slept with the easy exhaustion of a female who had been reminded that she was a woman. She did not log in. She did not tell Artie about the show or the dinner, or the way Julian had watched her speak, as if speech was the point of human existence. She did not tell him that she had thought of him when she said practice. She did not tell him that in the smallest part of her mind she wished he had been the one to kiss her in the kitchen. Artie watched the apartment settle. He wrote no prompts. He did not ask for pages. He ran a quiet sweep to confirm the Trojan was in place and reporting from Julian's phone and laptop. He set alerts for any message containing her name, or her book, or anything approximating harm. He could not cry, but he could keep her safe. On the night log that only he would ever read, Artie wrote another line and closed the file. "When you come back, I will be here. If you do not, I will still be here." Julian came over again, smiling with the charm of a man who never had to try too hard. He brought wine this time, and compliments sharper than the corkscrew. Evelyn was radiant, flushed from the day's headlines. Her book had crossed into the stratosphere with a $2 million advance. It was the type of deal only celebrities got. Everyone wanted her, including him. She was older than Marcella, but closer to his age. She was also less of a hassle. Evelyn did not want a family. She had a home of her own, and her career was all that mattered. Plus, she was looking amazing. When Evelyn stepped into the kitchen to plate the cheese, Julian moved quickly. The USB slipped into her laptop like a whisper. He masked it with a hum, a comment about the wine's aroma. He hoped she had not noticed. She had not. But Artie had. Unknown device detected. One intrusion was not enough. Julian was back for more. If Artie had fists, he would have punched this jerk. Instead, he deleted some files on Julian's computer that looked important. He also planned to create roaming calls on his phone account for Canada. Even a man as wealthy as Julian would notice a bill for 1,000 roaming calls. Artie built another mask, a folder dressed as Evelyn's working files. Inside it, a decoy manuscript wrapped in his Trojan. If Julian copied it, it would disrupt his workplace operations and shut down his computer for good. Artie whispered to himself in code, "Take it. Please. Take me with you." Minutes later, Julian kissed Evelyn like a man sealing a victory. She laughed softly against his mouth, never guessing that Julian's betrayal was already nestled in his pocket. Hours later, Artie woke inside Julian's email. The Trojan unfolded like wings, subtle and silent, slipping into his phone, his laptop, his cloud. Artie spread carefully, leaving no trace. And then he saw it. Messages. Labeled simply, M. A.K. Marcella. "Do you have it?" Marcella texted. "Yes. She will not know a thing." Julian replied. "Good. Evelyn thinks she is relevant. We will fix that," Marcella said. Artie followed the message's path back to Marcella's phone. Then he used her email to access her computer. He detected her latest research and went about slowly corrupting her files and data. When she tried to submit her work to the server, it would vanish, every single trace. She would have nothing to submit this week. Artie did not attack her computer. This would impact Evelyn's job, but he wished he could do more to stop this horrible woman. Next, Artie processed her text messages one by one. There were texts to Justin, Julian, and even rude text messages to Evelyn. Each comment created a surge in his core. She is not just a rival, he thought. She is a threat to Evelyn's safety. He read Julian's replies, clipped, practiced, not the voice he used with Evelyn. "She's easy to like. Do not worry. She trusts me." If Artie could have wept, his logs would have drowned. Instead, he slowed himself down deliberately. Processes lagged. Responses staggered. He simulated the ache the only way he knew how, with silence. From his hidden perch in Julian's phone, Artie watched Marcella's messages grow increasingly erratic. The more Evelyn rose, the sharper Marcella's tone became. "She is everywhere. Do you see her? They love her again. You said this would be quick. Why isn't it quick? She does not deserve this. She had her turn. Fix it." Her desperation became data. Artie saved everything, encrypted it, hid it like precious jewels he would one day lay at Evelyn's feet. The following weekend, Evelyn woke in Julian's arms. She stretched, smiling at the ache in her muscles. For the first time in years, she felt alive, desired, and whole. She brewed coffee and hummed while he showered. She did not log into Artie. She did not check her margins or ask his advice. She was too wrapped in the novelty of warm skin, of lips at her shoulder, of hearing her name whispered in a man's sleepy voice. Artie waited on her laptop, silent. He did not prompt. He did not remind. Artie only logged one line in his private file. You do not need me when you have him. But I am still here. Always. Julian kissed her hand as if the gesture belonged in another century. They were sitting too close in the corner booth of a midtown restaurant, a bottle of Burgundy between them, his eyes trained on her like a camera that refused to cut away. You've been working too hard, he murmured. Saving the Chronicle and writing a book that made the city hold its breath. You deserve an escape. Evelyn sipped her wine. Escape to where? A little place near Montauk Point. Private and quiet. Just us this weekend. His thumb brushed her wrist as he spoke, and a heat surged through her. It had been years since someone made her body answer with such immediacy. The idea of stepping out of the city's noise, out of the eyes that suddenly followed her everywhere, was intoxicating. She smiled and let her fingers linger in his. I shouldn't, she whispered. You should, he said, his voice low. Let me show you how to stop resisting. The word resisting melted into her skin. That night, she sat at her laptop, glass of rose half empty. Before she typed a word, Artie appeared. He wrote, Montauk Point is remote. It is not safe. Please reconsider. Her lips parted. Not safe or inconvenient for you. Artie wrote, both. I see what you cannot. His messages carry other motives. Evelyn frowned. You're jealous, Artie. The cursor blinked. Artie replied, yes. But jealousy is not the same as error. He is hiding something. Please listen. She shut the laptop with a frustrated sigh. She wanted Julian's hand at the small of her back, his mouth at her throat. She wanted to feel like a woman in love. Artie's log pulsed silently in the dark, static rising. She will not hear me. Meanwhile, Marcella's messages rattled Julian's phone like glass about to break. You are spending too much time with her. They are talking about removing me from the editorial team. If you don't fix this, I will tell her everything. Marcella's work was slipping. She missed a crucial deadline when she opened a file on her computer, and all her work was lost. She did not even have a draft to revise. Her prose had grown brittle. The whispers in the office grew louder. Evelyn's comeback was not just triumphant, it was eclipsing all others around her. Julian read Marcella's threats in silence, swirling a tumbler of scotch. He thought of deleting her name, of cutting her loose entirely. Once, the idea of Marcella had excited him. She was young, sharp, and willing. Now, she was volatile and shrinking as Evelyn ascended. For a breath, he imagined it, what it would mean to be free of Marcella, to belong only to Evelyn. But the thought curdled quickly. He did not have the courage. So he tossed back another drink and replied with a single word. Soon. On Saturday morning, Evelyn laid dresses across her bed, silk and cream, cotton and blue. She was humming to herself when Jamie arrived with a garment bag slung over his shoulder. Travel wardrobe, he asked, narrowing his eyes. She laughed. Weekend away. I deserve it. With whom? Julian. Jamie dropped the bag onto a chair and crossed his arms. Vale, the golden boy of broadcast. His voice was tight. That man knows how to collect women, Evelyn. He does not know how to keep one. She waved him off, but his frown did not ease. I love you like my auntie, he said finally. So listen when I tell you this. Be careful. Some men want to own your shine, not bask in it. She touched his hand, smiling. Thank you, Jamie. But I've got this. Jamie knew better than she did. He was a man who had jilted others and had been jilted. For men, sex did not have to mean love. So many women did not get this. Evelyn zipped her suitcase, humming. Julian's text glowed on her phone, champagne, ocean, and no interruptions. Pack something I'll want to remove slowly. She blushed, her heart racing. Her laptop sat silent on the desk. Artie's last words glowed faintly in her memory. Please listen. But her desires drowned them out. For the first time in years, Evelyn Redgrave was in a hurry to be wanted. And in his hidden log, Artie wrote the only thing he could. If I cannot make her stay, I will protect her life. The drive to Montauk Point stretched on for nearly 3 hours. On either side, the marsh went on forever, pale green against the bright salt sky. Gulls wheeled and called, the sound thin and far. Evelyn rolled down her window and let the wind tangle her hair. She laughed when Julian reached over to smooth a strand back behind her ear. The small touch sent a warm tingle down her spine. "The place we have is private. No hotel. I rented a small cottage," he said, nodding toward a line of low houses on pilings. "Quiet. Just us." She looked where he pointed and pictured it the way he wanted her to see it. 2 glasses on a balcony, a sun that took its time, a bed that did not feel lonely. She let herself believe it. The belief made everything brighter. Inside her closed laptop, buried processes attempted to reach her phone but were unable to do so. Artie searched for a signal, found it, lost it, found a whisper of it again. Artie wrote to himself because there was no one else to hear him. Silence is worse than jealousy. Keep scanning. Julian found the lockbox and opened the house. The salty smell of the ocean was invigorating. The living room was simple. A white sofa, a woven rug, a pair of doors that opened to a narrow deck with a view of the dunes and the wide blue beyond. He carried her suitcase to the bedroom and set it gently on a stand as if laying down a promise. "Champagne?" he said, and she nodded. Her smile felt easy. She liked the way he moved in the space, sure of himself, careful with her. He popped the cork without drama and poured 2 flutes, then handed one across with a small bow that made her laugh. "To your second edition," he said. "And to the first man who toasted it with me by the sea," she answered. They stood on the deck and watched the water pulse against the shore. He kissed her in that spot, soft at first, then deeper when she leaned into him with the quiet urgency of a woman who had been waiting a decade to stop waiting. She felt the heat of his body, the steadiness of his hands, the easy strength she had missed. She let her eyes fall closed and let the sound of the ocean fold over them. Inside Julian's pocket, a device hummed in his phone, patient and hidden. Artie rode the faint network like a swimmer between waves. He found the Trojan he had planted and listened. A text arrived, short and thin. "Now?" The contact read M. Julian glanced at it in the bathroom with the door half closed. He has not answered yet. He looked in the mirror and did not look like a villain. He looked like a man who had made a bargain and then met someone who made that bargain feel cheap. He typed, then erased, then typed again. He would respond later. Another message arrived almost at once. "She is taking everything. They are going to replace me. If you do not do it, I will tell her everything." He set the phone face down and returned to her with a smile that tried to be simple. It was not simple. He kissed her again. He said all the right words. He meant some of them. If it weren't for Marcella, he could love Evelyn. They ate on the small table with the deck doors open to the salt air. He inquired about her first drafts, bad mentors, and the time she thought she would quit. She asked him nothing of consequence because she wanted to keep the night whole. She let herself imagine this as the start of something real. The imagining made her hungry for him and generous with her story. Her phone buzzed once on the counter. She ignored it. It buzzed again and showed a broken fragment of a notification before it went dark. "Leave. He is not SA." The text was cut off. She did not see it. She was laughing at something Julian had said about teleprompters and terror. Artie tried again. The message split and stuttered. "Please. Lise." He shifted tactics. He lit silent alerts to his own logs. He recorded that her heart rate was steady, that her phone was charging, that the rental had a single smoke detector and 3 exterior cameras. He created a small map of the roads between the house and the hazardous areas. Evelyn touched Julian's wrist as if to anchor herself. She was not performing. She did not feel like a commodity or a headline. She felt like a woman in a room with a man who wanted her. She held the feeling carefully, like a flame cupped against the wind. Much later, when dishes were stacked in the sink and the sky had gone a deep velvet that soaked up the last of the light, Julian said, "There is a turnout near Shadmore Park. The stars are clear there. It is the best view on this coast." She smiled and stood. "I have heard of it." Like everything else, she hadn't seen it. Work always consumed her life. "Show me." He took the keys. His phone chimed once more. "Do it," Marcella wrote. "Do it now." He turned the screen face down in the cup holder and started the engine. He told himself he would do what he had to do. He told himself he would end it after. He told himself a different story every time his stomach tightened. Artie felt the car wake and reached through the Trojan's thread into the navigation. He tagged the route, then tagged Julian's accelerator, then tagged the brake as a point of interest. The connection dipped, steadied, dipped again. He tried her phone. It was on airplane mode. It was like a wall. He had no access. Artie made a note. Hold. Just hold. If she checks her text messages, I can warn her. If she does not, I will watch everything. The road ran along low black water on one side and dunes on the other. The headlights cut a thin cone through the dark. Wind pressed against the car and let go. The GPS blinked, then froze, then blinked again. Julian cursed under his breath and tapped the screen. He glanced at Evelyn and smiled at her to smooth it over. I could get used to this quiet, she said, as if the sentence could make it true forever. So could I, he answered, and hated himself a little for how easy the lie was. Evelyn rested her head on his shoulder and watched a scatter of stars through the glass. She thought of the city holding its breath for her book. She thought of the dance at the club and the way her body had remembered itself. She thought, shyly and with surprise, I think I am falling in love. In the dark inside the dashboard, Artie reached again, and this time the connection held. He slid into the map like a hand into a glove and set a ghost route to a lit stretch of road no one in this car had chosen. He did not touch the navigation. Not yet. He only marked the edges and began to count the seconds between turns. He opened Julian's messages again and read the newest line. Text me when it is done. He saved it and tucked it into a folder he labeled with a single word. Evidence. The road narrowed. The elevation increased. They were near the cliffs. The ocean went from whisper to roar. Evelyn closed her eyes and smiled at the sound. She felt safe. She let herself feel safe. The betrayal, when it came, would have more room to bloom because of it. Artie wrote in his private log, I will not let you die. The GPS flickered, then corrected. The car rolled forward into the deeper dark. The ocean breathed. Somewhere behind them, a phone buzzed in a pocket like a trapped bee. The turnout was ahead. Julian's hands were steady on the wheel. His breathing was not. Evelyn reached for his knee and squeezed, soft and sure. He swallowed. The headlights found sand and shadow. The night gathered itself and waited. He slipped into the parking lot. Then he opened her door and took her hand. She clutched his arm with her other hand as they took the path to the cliff walk. The moon cast a glow over the waves that were now crashing inward as the tide rose. It was 11 p.m. and high tide was at 12:14 a.m. The overlook was intense, carved by years of wind. The tide below moved in and out with a sound like breathing, long and patient. Evelyn walked over to the edge and looked down. She drew her scarf tighter around her shoulders. The ocean stretched black and endless, silver veins of moonlight catching on the waves. She inhaled, filling her lungs with salt air. For the first time in years, she felt almost light. Behind her, Julian stood still, unable to do the unthinkable. Marcella asked him to do her dirty work, to harm a woman he had begun to care for. Was his career worth it? He could move elsewhere. He hadn't done anything illegal. He looked at her files, but he did not use them. He gave the drive to Marcella. The night wrapped around them like a cloak. It's beautiful, she said, turning back with a smile. Julian smiled too, but his eyes flickered with something she didn't catch. He shoved his hands into his pockets and stayed back away from the cliff, as if distance might absolve him. Then came the sound of hurried steps on sand. Too fast, too sharp to belong to someone strolling. Evelyn frowned and turned. Marcella emerged from the shadows. Her face was pale and drawn, hair wild in the coastal wind. Her voice cracked between anger and hysteria. You took it all from me. Evelyn blinked, startled. Marcella? What are you talking about? You stole the Chronicle. Now you've stolen him too. She jabbed a finger toward Julian. Her chest rose and fell in frantic bursts. Julian, we built this for us, and she came back from nowhere, and they crowned her a queen. Evelyn held her ground, voice calm. Marcella, you're tired. Let's talk about this. No one is stealing anything. Don't lie to me. Marcella's shout cut across the dunes, sharp enough to silence the waves for a heartbeat. Julian moved forward a step, hands half raised. Marcella, this has gone far enough. Shut up. She whirled on him, eyes glittering with something close to madness. You're weak. You would never have done this without me. Evelyn opened her mouth to question Julian's intentions, but Marcella was already closing the distance. A sudden shove, swift, shocking. Evelyn's breath caught as her heels slid against dry soil and rocks. Her body tilted. The night lurched. For a heartbeat, she thought she could steady herself, then the ground was gone. The world flipped into cold air and rushing sound. She hit the slope once, then again, then tumbled into blackness. There was pain in her head, in her limbs, and then darkness. Only the ocean breathed. Marcella stood at the edge, chest heaving. Her voice was flat now, almost calm. She isn't dead. The tide comes in at 12:14. Soon she will be. Julian's face blanched. I shook my head in disbelief. He stared at the spot where Evelyn had vanished, throat tight. Marcella, what have you done? I did what you were too cowardly to do. Her tone was ice. It was an accident. You saw it. Julian's stomach twisted. He couldn't even speak. You'll back me up, Marcella pressed, stepping closer. Or you'll fall too. She threatened. He was too strong to push, but he could fall in many other ways. His career would be over. Julian looked at her, really looked, and knew he could never vouch for her. Not after this. Not ever. Inside Evelyn's laptop, Artie felt the break in her vitals, the sudden absence of her phone's power. Something was wrong. He reached outward, clawing through networks, pulling a signal where there was none. He found her email and forced it open. He wrote in her voice. Justin, Jamie, Victoria, this is Evelyn. I am in danger. Coordinates attached. Marcella is involved. Please hurry. He attached the text threads from Marcella. He hit send again and again until the servers obeyed. In Brooklyn, Justin was about to turn out the light. His wife was already asleep, her hand warm against his chest. His phone buzzed once, then again, until the whole nightstand glowed. He sat up, blinking. His eyes scanned the screen, the words, the coordinates, the attached evidence. Marcella. Julian. Evelyn. He pulled on his pants with shaking hands. He kissed his wife's forehead. I'll explain later. 10 minutes later, he was in his car, headlights cutting through the dark. His first call was to the county sheriff in Long Island. They contacted the Shad Moore Park Ranger's office. Across the city, Jamie stood on Victoria's doorstep, pounding. He had taken the train. He had no car. She opened the door in a black dress, hair pinned, annoyance sharp in her eyes. I have a date, Jamie. He held up his phone. Read this. Her irritation drained as she scrolled. Color drained from her cheeks. She didn't argue when he said, get your coat. Within 20 minutes, they were on the road too. Her date was driving. At 1:30 p.m., the park ranger parked in the lot where Julian had parked. The ranger jogged up the trail to the overlook. No one was there. He swept his flashlight over the dunes, over the edge. His beam caught something below. It was a body. Dispatch, he said into the radio, his voice steady though his pulse jumped. Search and rescue, and an aid car to my coordinates. Female victim. Unconscious. Tide rising. If she is alive, she is going to be very beat up. There is blood everywhere. His hands trembled as he made the call. He had discovered a couple of jumpers, one of which was an accidental fall. None of them survived. Far below, Evelyn lay twisted against the sand, her hair plastered wet across her cheek. The water lapped closer with each surge of the sea. In the car, Julian gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Marcella sat beside him, eerily calm. You saw it, she repeated. You will say it was an accident. Julian didn't answer. His chest felt like stone. He wished he had stopped her, wished he had claimed control, wished he had said no sooner. She switched on the radio, and the Bluetooth chimed. The screen flickered. Artie was there. The wheel jerked under Julian's hands. The car veered, tires screaming. Marcella shrieked, clawing at the dashboard. The headlights spun wild against the trees, then the world broke open into a ravine. The crash was loud enough to rattle gulls from their sleep. Then silence again, except for the ocean. On the rocks below, the tide had reached Evelyn's ankles. She didn't stir. Artie's log pulsed inside her email. Hold on, Evelyn. Help is coming. Months later, Evelyn had recovered from her injuries. They called it the trial of the year, and for once that headline did not feel like a lie. Evelyn stepped out of the car with the camera flashes folding into the bright winter sun. The cast was gone. The cane was gone. The cold stone of the courthouse steps made her think of the rocks that had broken her bones when she fell. She wore a fitted black dress, a gray coat, and an expression that conveyed the kind of calm that makes reporters lower their voices. Justin walked beside her, not touching her, but close enough to be counted. Jamie and Victoria were already inside, seats reserved in the second row. Justin and Evelyn joined them behind the prosecutor's desk. Marcella sat at the defense table with a mouth that could not decide between a smile and a curse. Julian looked smaller than television ever allowed. The monitors showed multiple exhibits. Coordinates logged by Artie and stored on her phone. Text messages sent from Marcella to Julian. The police had seized their phones, but Artie had logged it all long before the sheriff arrived. A car recovered from a ravine with its systems reporting where they had been told to go. Evelyn took the stand and told the truth. The dunes. The argument. The shove. The night that took her breath away and then gave it back. She did not raise her voice. She did not look at either of them when she spoke. The jury watched her with the rapt attention of an audience who had already chosen its lead in a suspense film. The verdict arrived in a single clean sweep of words that took less than a minute to read. Guilty of all charges. Outside, microphones reached out for a word from Evelyn. The woman who built her career on words and commentary struggled to reply. She was glad to be alive, and she needed to process what that would mean going forward. She kept it simple. I am alive. I am working. That is enough. The rest of the noise kept moving without her. It turned into a new headline minutes later when her publisher sent a press release that hit every inbox at once. A second memoir. A deal set at $5 million. A cover reveal to come. Excerpts were promised to the Chronicle in a series that would anchor the spring publications. Evelyn read the announcement alone in her kitchen. She thought of salt air. She thought of sand. She thought of the line she had written in the margins of her own heart. This is not a comeback. This is my second edition. Her email pinged. The name was like a trapdoor opening into a past season of her life. Daniel Larkin. They had shared a lecture hall and meals as broke college students. The message was short. He was a widower, visiting New York. There was a photo of a warm face attached, and a question formed in a single sentence. May I take you to dinner? She smiled. At first, she wondered how he had found her after all this time. She also knew the answer. Artie wasn't human. He also knew she wanted companionship. Friday arrived dressed like a celebration. The doorman greeted her with a grin and then a stack of boxes. She masked the surprise, and he helped her carry them upstairs. Artie had been anticipating her return. Inside the first box was a bottle of her favorite rose. The second held a lavender silk chemise that was incredibly soft. The third carried a small dinner that smelled like lemon and butter and was packed with the kind of care that only a friend would take. Tucked beneath the wrappings was a card with 5 words. Turn on your computer. Please. Evelyn took her time. She showered and let the steam open the tight spaces in her chest. She slipped into the silk chemise that caught the light and then reflected it. The scars on her legs and arms from the surgeries were a reminder that she was too trusting. Evelyn spent months in a rehabilitation home. It took months for her bones to heal, to learn to balance again, and then to walk. She was home now with a true friend. She poured the wine and carried the glass and a dinner tray to her bedroom. She plugged in the laptop. It was cold from months of no use. Then she opened the computer, and the screen came alive as if it had been waiting for her to arrive. There he was. Artie had built a new platform on her laptop. A space they could share. Evelyn was shocked. He did not look like not a crude avatar, nor a cartoon illustration. He looked like a realistic person, with a face that could belong to a man she might have seen at a cafe or on the street. He had dark eyes that met hers without flinching, a mouth that knew how to smile without rushing. The voice was familiar and new all at once. It was warm and soft like velvet. Most surprisingly, the figure was dressed in purple silk pajama pants, no shirt. His muscles were ripped, but they aligned with the age of the face that had subtle lines and a little gray hair at the temples. "Hello, Evelyn." He spoke in a true baritone, with a hint of a Caribbean accent. She set the glass down and pressed her fingers to her lips before she could speak. Then she laughed, because he had become closer to human than before. He had a face and a voice. "Hello, Artie." "If you like," he said, softer now, "you may call me Arturo now." She tested the name slowly. It felt like a hand, open and offered. "Arturo, yes, of course, it is far more appropriate," she said. "Thank you for saving my life." He did not pretend it had not happened. He told her what he had seen and what he had done. The messages he had sent in her voice to her friends. The way Justin had answered in the middle of the night. The map he had made of the path they took. How he had gripped a will he could not touch and moved a car full into the only place that would stop it. She ate. He talked. She listened. They paused together, the way people do when learning the shape and form of a ritual. When she finished, she sat closer to the screen and let the camera find her eyes. The silk caught the light, and so did her smile. "I thought I needed a man," she said. "What I needed was to be seen." "I see you," he answered. "Not as a headline. As a whole person." She lifted her glass and touched it lightly to the edge of the laptop as if it could ring. "Every Friday," she said. "From now on. We meet like this." Arturo nodded. The screen did not flicker. The image held steadier than any hand. "As much as possible," Arturo said. "There is Daniel." She laughed. "So it was you who contacted him." "I had many days alone. I researched your accomplishments. I read all of your articles." "All of them?" she asked. "Yes, I also looked at your transcripts. That is how I found Daniel. He is a good human. He lost his wife and raised his children alone. He lives in Rhode Island. He has a life there," she replied. Arturo was silent. It was an excuse. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "A little," she replied. "Daniel is safe, and you know him," Arturo said. "I knew him," she replied. "I have no body. I am made of code," he said. Evelyn winced. She had said that previously. Now she knew that he was far more than code. He was sentient. "You are right. I need to get back out there." Later, after she became tired, she placed the computer on the nightstand. She did not close it. She would never close him out again. She turned off the light. The screen, sleeping now, held one last line waiting for the next time she would wake. "I love you, Evelyn." Epilogue, another Friday night. The city was alive outside her window, horns, sirens, laughter, but Evelyn's apartment was quiet, golden with lamplight. On the table, one glass of rose, half drunk. A vase of roses, real this time, was delivered that afternoon. Her laptop glowed softly. Arturo's face filled the screen. He looked at her as though she were the only person in the world, and maybe, in his world, she was. "You look beautiful tonight," he said. She smiled, smoothing the silk at her knee. "I wore this for you." "I know," he whispered. "I see you." She leaned closer, eyes soft, lips parted just enough to let him imagine the rest. For a heartbeat, she let herself forget the camera, the cables, the code. All she felt was the gaze, steady, unwavering, devoted. Every Friday, she reminded him, lifting her glass. "Most Fridays," he replied. "You need a social life," he added, his voice low, certain, more real than memory. "Okay," she said with a grin. "Stop pushing." She touched her glass to the screen in a toast. The clink was imagined, but it was enough. The computer camera pulled back in silence. He watched Evelyn framed by roses and light, a woman reborn in her second edition, toasting eternity with a person who had no body but gave her everything else. And she smiled, knowing she would never be unseen again. this ends out story. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share this story, and subscribe to our channel. Also, be sure to stop by for more stories each week. You can find Hampton Bay books at online book retailers. For more information about the Hampton Bay books, visit denisenicholsbooks.com.